Now, rental affordability across Australia is at its worst level on record. The recent PropTrack index showed the average rent is now 38% more than pre-COVID.
Households in New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania are facing the toughest conditions, and with wages not rising fast enough, many low and middle income families across the country are being priced out entirely. PropTrack senior economist Paul Ryan joins us now to talk a little bit more about the report. Good morning to you, Paul. Good to have you in.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Tell us a bit more about the findings that you found on rental affordability.
So we've looked at what proportion of rental properties people all across the income spectrum can afford, and really those shares are at the lowest level we've seen in at least 17 years. And it means that if you're a household on a median income of about $110,000 a year, you can only afford 39% of available rentals, and that's a record low.
That figure of how much rents have gone up since COVID, 38% more than pre-COVID. How does that compare over time, over the last, say, 20 years? Because that seems like a significant jump.
It is, really. Before the pandemic, we had quite an extended period of slower rental growth. Actually, rental affordability improved quite markedly over the 15 or 20 years before the pandemic. And so really what's happened is we've had a shift in demand, how households use homes. People want more space now. That's put a lot of pressure on the housing stock. And it points to really the long-term solution out of this housing crisis is building more homes. But in the short term, I mean, particularly low-income renters need more support.
Yeah, we'll get to the solutions in a moment, but just tell us a bit more about what those factors are at play behind the rental increases.
So particularly in inner city areas, we saw throughout the pandemic rents fall quite markedly, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. And we've seen rents rebound quite fast over the past couple of years. In regional areas, we saw a bigger than normal push of migration towards regional areas, and that's put a huge amount of pressure on rental markets there. So regional parts of Australia have seen tight rental conditions now for 4 years straight, really low rental availability, really fast rent growth. And that really has changed the rental market, and the supply of homes hasn't kept up. There's been a number of challenges for building homes, getting trades. The cost of materials has increased quite markedly since the pandemic.
So on the topic of solutions then, earlier this week the Greens proposed a plan that would see the government develop more homes and then they would be available to the public to buy or rent at a discounted rate. What did you make of that proposal?
So I think what's positive about this is it recognises that the real solution to this housing crisis is building more homes. And in past decades, the government has been a significant direct builder of homes. But there's some big questions here, and mostly it's around where would these homes be built, because the big challenge at the moment is building well-located homes in our cities, moderate density around transport hubs, things like that. How would we allocate these cheaper homes? And a lot of the savings that are being proposed here are from waiving stamp duty. And we know that stamp duty is a huge burden for new home buyers in particular. It's in Sydney and Melbourne about 6 months of average wages. So maybe the conversation should be, should everyone get that kind of discount? Should we reform stamp duty and reduce that burden?
What are the other things that can be done apart from increasing the availability of homes?
In the short term, I think we should look at Commonwealth rent assistance. We saw that rent assistance, which goes to low-income renters primarily, increased 15% last year. But according to our research, if you're a low-income renter in the bottom 20 or 30% of the household income distribution, any rental that you join puts you in a position of housing stress. So I think more needs to be done at that end of the market in the short term.
We're seeing the trend of more apartments popping up, particularly in the city areas. Is that, given these price concerns, is that something that we're just going to keep seeing happen?
We have seen that trend over the past couple of decades. I think that's part of our cities evolving, is if we're going to accommodate population growth over the longer term, there's no additional land in our cities. So using that land more effectively, particularly around transport hubs, is I think a key area of concern.
Senior economist Paul Ryan, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.